Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host Tony Evans. Now, those that follow me on the Tick and the Talks will know that I did say that I was going to solely talk about Helloween, the power metal gods from Europe, but I've decided, after deep diving into the genre of power metal, I noticed I hadn't done it as a genre dive. I've done all the others, or a few of them. I thought, well, you know what, I will talk about Helloween, and I might do Helloween later on in the month, as it is spooky October. But I changed my mind, as is my prerogative. You know, 'tis my show. I hope that you have had a good week or so. The weather is closing in here. It's got really cold all of a sudden, and about to rain. So if it thunders and storms while we're listening to this music, or listen to this podcast, sorry, while I'm recording it, the more the better, right? Adds to the atmosphere, if you know what I mean. Anyway, power metal, power metal, power metal. Where do we begin? It is what it says on the packet. It is power and is metal. Now, I myself am not a power metal fiend. I have lots of friends that are. I do enjoy the genre. It has elements that I do find enjoyable. I'd find it sometimes a little bit silly. That's okay. That's not saying that you people listening out there, all lovely listeners that love power metal, that's not having a go at you. That's just my own perception. Now, you might say, but really, all metal can be a bit silly, and that is true. It is very true. But where do we begin? Now, I'll tell you my first encounter with the genre. Many moons ago, when the world was pre-internet, and you had to go to the library, read a book, watch TV, and watch it not all binged at one time, but week after week, episode after episode. That's the world we were living in. You know, wibbly wobbly, go back in time with the old Scooby-Doo effect. Anyway, I knew a guy, and I've mentioned him before on my show. I know two guys called Melvin. One called Crazy Melvin, and one called Normal Melvin, right? Well, Crazy Mel, he probably is, I don't know. I haven't seen him for 27 years. He was in his 40s then, so I don't know what he's doing now. But Melvin was a Mauritian, or is a Mauritian, music nut, a real nutter. Like, probably hit my mic. I've talked to him before. He was one of the most genuine Satanist. So when these people, you know, when they say, "Oh, I'm a Satanist," and you go, "Yeah, whatever." You might have a black candle in your cupboard. Doesn't mean you're a Satanist. He lived it, right? He got me almost arrested for. He chucked a stone at a cop and ran away, and I didn't know he chucked it. And I'm standing at the bus stop, and the car pulled up. I did a lot of talking that day to get me out of it. Let me tell you. Anyway, that aside, he had this amazing record collection. So he was a punk from the past, from the 70s, and he really, really loved all sorts of really heavy black metal, like really into the Burzum and Venom, and so when I first heard Venom was because of Melvin, right? But he also had this soft spot for things like the Eagles, and and the Police and so on. But he had this album by a band called Warlord, which we'll talk about later on, American power metal band. And he lent me a copy. He had like 4 copies. He always had every copy of the album in colour that it was released. So if it was released on 6 colours, he'd have 6 copies of them. He was really, really. This was his favourite album of them all, Warlord, Deliver Us. And it took me years to remember the album. Years after I left England and was in Australia, I could not remember for the life of me the name of the album. But it came back to me years ago now, and now you can get it on Spotify and iTunes and any of the downloading platforms you wish to choose it to get it on. Anyway, that aside, I first heard them there, and it's a far cry from the power metal that is out around now. It's the first wave of power metal. So power metal is a genre that first erupted in the early 80s in America, North America mainly. And it was completely different to the European style that arrived a few years later. Now the American style, let me get my notes, I've got it in my book. So I'm using a new notebook, so if it creaks and makes noises, it's because it's brand new leather cover, so it's lovely. I'm just going to smell it. New notes. Anyway, I'll give you the definition of it, okay? It's a combination of elements of traditional heavy metal and speed metal with the symphonic content that is faster and lighter and more uplifting. Anthematic-like songs with fantasy-based subject matters with strong choruses, powerful and dynamic sound. That's the way that it's described. And it's pretty apt, actually. It describes the genre very aptly. American bands that you would probably know that you might or might not know. Bands like Kirith Ungol, Jagdpanzer, Manila Road, Omen, Riot, Sabotage, and of course Warlord, which I just mentioned before. Their family, the family history of, if you're looking at a family line of speed metal, basically it goes back to 1977, 76, but I write that down. Where is it? Excuse me, see, new notebook. I did write it down. Yes. So according to anthropologist Sam Dunn, Stargazer, A Light in the Black from 1976 Rising album, and Kill the King and Lady of the Lake from 1978's Long Live Rock, are both by Rainbow, are the heritage of power metal. So Dio and Rainbow were basically where it was born. Oh, hear me click on it now. And it's considered the earliest form of it. And I'd probably agree with that, actually, because most of power metal's themes are fantasy based. So Lord of the Rings is a big sort of literary pot that they pull out from. There's also they do a lot of stuff with epic poems, a lot of Viking. I mean, Man of War, of course. Do a lot of battle stuff, a lot of epic war. Even though they're not, power metal is not a political beast as a musical form. Bands like Sabaton, who I've talked to before on the show, are definitely a power metal band, and they have obviously war themes, mainly First and Second World War, but they do go into the Vikings and they do go into Nordic mythology. So in some way they can be lumped in, although I would say they're on a side slightly to the traditional power metal. So the difference between the European and the American power metal, the American power metal was very connected to the new wave of British heavy metal. It's harder and a slightly faster tone, and the European is more melodic, less speed, a little bit more technical in that respect. Of course, people say, but what kind of thing do you get when you listen to power metal? Well, firstly, you get your vocals. Your vocals are like Dio, like Rob Halford, actually, I would say is a main influence. Falsetto, high, dramatic voices, really chorus anthematic sing-along, like Painkiller, like the new single that's just released this week, which is an unbelievably good single. I highly recommend you all going to listen to the new Judas Priest single, which is, I just mentioned it on my TikToks yesterday, but it is really, really, really good. Panic Attack, which I think is, as my good friends at The Burning said, sounds like Painkiller Part 2. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic. Anyway, that aside, so that's what you get from the vocals, okay? That's your power metal. So if you're trying to work in your head what kind of sound is this before I go and listen to it, think operatic vocal. Not always, but that's really where it sort of sits. And then we have the guitar. So basically, the guitar plays a rapid stream of notes, mainly in the chorus, but slows down. It's lots of rapid notes in the solos, but it's quite a slow change of key from notes. So it sort of goes from tempo of one per measure. It's a much slower change. So it changes one per measure. So a really slow rhythmic change with a really fast arpeggio style guitar harmonics over the top. It's technically more demanding in the solos. And sadly, the bass, as I'm a bass player here, often sits in the back, drowned out by the rest of the band, and just sort of hangs along with the rhythm. Some bands don't do that. Helloween and Symphony X and Hiberia, they don't. They push their bass forward. That's why I like Helloween for that reason. And then the drums. The drums are basically double kick drums, playing 16th notes and a snare to accent. Then they use the snare to accent the note on top. This isn't always the case. Some of them play single drum kick, but most of them is double drums on 16. A real sort of speed of 16th notes, if you know about drumming. And then you have keyboards. Now the keyboards, which is another differentiation between traditional metal and power metal, is that there is a key section. For those lovers of the keyboard, John, I'm looking at you, and me myself, who love a little bit of synth. Power metal has it there for you, and they usually use the synth to sort of pop in sort of orchestral sounds. So they create an orchestra sound through the synth. It was sort of pioneered by, I'm gonna get this name wrong, guys, so please don't come at me. It was pioneered by Ingo Schweitzenberger from Stradivarius, where Yngwie J. Malmsteen playing with. Now, it was very funny. We had on a side note, we were having a chat friend of mine once, Dave and I, and he said, "Why is it Yngwie J. Malmsteen? How many Yngwie Malmsteens are there that you have to put the J in to sort of identify yourself?" He doesn't go by that anymore now. It's Yngwie Malmsteen, isn't it? But it used to be Yngwie J. Malmsteen, I remember. And then, of course, you get bands like Blind Guardian and Iced Earth, who are more like thrash-based power metal. So there's so many different subgenres within the power metal scene, which is what makes it such a, what makes heavy metal such a wonderful thing, right? So it's sort of, for me, I apologise. The drumming was Ingo Schweitzenberger. The keys were popularised by Jens Johnson of Stradivarius. I'm looking at my notebook on the wrong page. You know me. Anyway, so that's what makes the subgenre so fascinating. What makes metal such a fascinating musical form as it is, because there's so much depth to it. But power metal is, don't take it wrong. Those that listen to, I love black metal and I love heavy stuff, but I also like a lighter tone. And it's not light as in not heavy, because if you listen to Helloween's first album, which we'll talk about in the second half, or even Warlord's first album, or Blind Guardian's albums, or any of those new wave ones, like anything from Sonata Arctica, those sort of, I've got a list here, Running Wild, Rage, Gravedigger, Blind Guardian, Stradivarius, Gamma Ray, Hammerfall, Nightwish, Rhapsody of Fire. Any of those European power metal bands, they're not light. They're not listen with your mother kind of thing. They're still heavy. They just don't have heavy themes, and it's sort of cleaner. So a lot of people put Iron Maiden. Well, I popped too much, didn't I? A lot of people put Iron Maiden in that category of power metal, which is completely wrong. If you listen to, and we'll talk about Warlord in the next half, there is a song that they do that does sound like it comes straight off the first Iron Maiden album. Yes, it does. That doesn't mean that Iron Maiden are a power metal band. No, they're not. They're a traditional heavy metal band. The difference is that power metal bands take the sound of traditional heavy metal bands, add more symphonic backing, and make it slightly faster. Most power metal songs are much faster than any Iron Maiden will ever play. And like you just look at Dragon Force, for instance. Like, I used to be a big Dragon Force fan. I have to tell you, I really liked them for quite some time, and then I burnt myself out with them. The last album was a stinker. Sorry, Dragon Force fans, it just was. It was fun at the time, but there's only so many computer game noises I can take, and the speed for me is a little bit too much. It loses some of its depth and its nuance when it gets that fast. But anyway, that's not to say they're not brilliant. A lot of people love them, and Dave, my mate, absolutely adores them. We've seen them live 3 or 4 times. and they are good live. Well, the last experience in the basement was a pretty shitty one, but that's okay. That aside, there are so many more modern bands. So Sonata Arctica is one. Iced Earth, Camelot, who I saw at the basement a few years ago, another one. Sabaton, which I talked about before, which are sort of power metal bands, but of course you have Helloween as well, who are the sort of face of the genre, I think now, or they were. I mean, now probably more so. It's Dragon Force, but anyway, that's enough for this side. I'm going to go and get myself a fresh hot drink, as it's cold here today, and we'll go over my picks and bands that I think you should dive into if and only if this chat about power metal has engaged you. You might go, oh no, it sounds awful, Tone, I'm not even bothering, but that's what this show's about, isn't it? Open up your mind, use your imagination, listen to something different, release yourself from your restraints. That's what music is about. That's what makes music wonderful, is we're not all just listening to Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? And that's no disrespect to Taylor Swift either. No disrespect at all. But what I'm saying, I just used that name popped into my head. I could have said anyone. I could have said Madonna. I could have said, Sex Pistols. I could have said anyone. Doesn't matter. Anyway, enough of me rambling. When I get back after the break, I'm going to chat about my picks of the power metal genre, the songs that I reckon you should jump into, and the albums that I would firstly listen to. Anyway, enjoy the adverts. I'm going to get myself a fresh cup of tea. See you soon. Bye for now, guys. Welcome back, pop pickers, to my rundown of power metal. I have the power, as we He-Man fans would say of my generation. Where that came from, I have no idea. I'm sure there's a power metal band out there that is based on He-Man. I'm absolutely probably sure. If there is one, and anyone knows about it, let me know, because I think it'll be a good laugh. Anyway, then that's another thing about power metal, is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. A lot of the black metal stuff, a lot of the extreme metal, even some of the traditional stuff, takes itself really seriously. But speed metal and power metal never seems to do that. It never seems to take itself too seriously. Which brings me firstly to my first recommendation. So, Warlord, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I said I first come across I generally only know one album of theirs, and that's Deliver Us, which is their first album, which you can get on Spotify. It's the 2020 reissue, I think, that's on there. Let me give you some brief rundown of the band. Formed in Los Angeles in 1980 by guitarist William J. Samis and drummer Mark Zonda. They've been releasing albums. They were active 80 to 86, then 2002 to 2011, and in present. They've had many members. Let's not worry about the members. Let's look at the discography. So, Deliver Us came out in 1983, so nice and early on in the power metal scene, right? So right at the birth, because you're just coming out of the new wave of heavy metal from the UK, which was dominating the world. Thrash was sort of not far away, if on its borderline, along with Venom and extreme metal. And they released... It was actually 2012 re-released, I apologise, after the reunion of the band. And it's quite hard to get hold of, to be fair. It's not a long album. The three tracks on it that I particularly would ask you to listen to that really stand out as power metal songs for me are the opening track, Deliver Us from Evil. It's a 6-minute song. Then I would come down to the second side and the third track, which is Lucifer's Hammer. And then on the reissue, really luckily, we get Mrs. Victoria. So Mrs. Victoria is a good song that's only available on the reissue, but I think it was released as a single on the B-side in Japan originally. But Deliver Us From Evil and Lucifer's Hammer are my favourite. They basically, particularly Lucifer's Hammer. I can't say it. Lucifer's Hammer. Rewind it. Lucifer's Hammer is a rollicking roller coaster of power metal sing-along vocals. It's got that, and remember I said one sounds like it could come straight off of a Maiden album. This one sounds like it's just walked off of a set from the Horse and Coat, the Sound Room House in Kingsbury, or the Marquee in 1982 or 81. It sounds like a new wave of heavy metal song. In fact, it could sit quite comfortably if it was covered by Maiden on a Maiden album. Ooh, heritage, I used to say, but no, I think heresy, I used to say heritage, heresy. Where's my brain today? Hang on. I think I left it somewhere. Maybe it's on the washing line. Washing all my dirty thoughts away, if you know what I mean. Anyway. That's it's got a wonderful hand-painted cover. I really like the band. I think this is I can't speak of the other albums, but this is the one that I'd go to first. And then I'd jump probably forward from there to Helloween. Now, I know you say, hang on, but aren't they the pioneers aren't they the face of the genre? Yeah, they are. But I think if you're going to go and try, you want to sort of go through it use them as landmarks and then find other bands around that period. So for me, Helloween, obviously the first album we want to grab is 1987's Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1. Okay. Again, there's a Part 2 as well that came out the following year. It is semi-proggy in a way that it's sort of a story within a story. It's everything that the power metal genre has become. Fast, as I mentioned, 16th notes on the drums, more bass than other bands, high falsetto, operatic vocals, string segments, sweeping, dramatic, slow chord changes, fast, and insanely accurate guitar solos. And if you're going to get that, for me, then there's a couple on this album. All right, Helloween, brilliant. For me, it is it's their sort of signature song. I think it has everything you want in it. It's got sing along. It's got a brilliant guitar solo, fantastic heavy bass part in it. And I also really like, to be honest, I think a little time and Twilight of the Gods. In fact, the whole album really. But those are the ones I'd pick out. So I'll write these in the show notes if I can remember to do so. But a little time, Twilight of the Gods, Helloween, off this album are brilliant. And again, the whole album is fantastic. The whole first two albums are brilliant. I would then move probably stepped into Gamma Ray, which was a band that sort of again European, that sound very much like Helloween. I think I know that my good friend David is a big fan of Gamma Ray. I won't say that I'm a huge lover of the band, but if I'm looking for something from them to offer you up to listen to, I'm probably going to say my one, which is the one that I first listened to, was To the Metal, which is a 2010 album. Okay, Rise, really good. Mother Angel, fantastic. And probably to follow up, I just try and get 3 songs of each album. Let's try and do that. Probably No Need to Cry are the ones that I like on the Gamma Ray album. And that's only because that's the first album I listened to Gamma Ray, 2010. Dave got me into that one. I think I got it on CD somewhere, to be honest. Or it could be no, it was definitely To the Metal. Of course, they've been around since the late 90s. Power Plant in 1999, Somewhere Out in Space in 97. I think it was their first album. They're basically some of the band members from some of the big European Power Metal act sort of joined forces when they separated off and became Gamma Ray. They've played in Australia a few times. Again, very much a European sound, and if you love that sound, they had a band you probably want to get your hands on. One second. You know, and you're saying to me, but Tony, aren't there bands, other bands that you want to talk about? Yes. Let's look at Running Wild and Gravedigger. Now, Running Wild, if you want an Iron Maiden sounding band, then Running Wild is your band. Of all of the bands that came out of that genre, or come out from this genre, to me, Running Wild is the closest to Iron Maiden. And I know you're going to say, but isn't that just listening to Iron Maiden? No, not necessarily. They just really, really love. I think you can really hear Maiden in their sound. You can really feel them, and it's sort of, you hear the heritage. Like also, Running Wild, there's a lot of Judas Priest heritage there as well, with KK Downing and Glenn Tipton style guitars. They were formed actually before Maiden, or around the sort of same time in '76. So they're more later influence, I think they come from. They're part of the top four, or the powerful four of Germany in the scene. So you've got your other big four, as I like to call it. You've got Gravedigger, Helloween, and Rage, and Running Wild. Yeah, look, maybe I might. I don't know. I just, every time I listen to Running Wild, I hear Maiden. Is that I don't know if that's me. Could be just me, maybe. I don't know. You listen to it and tell me what you think, but I think most of us think that they do sound a lot like Maiden. They have a bit of the gallop going on there in the later albums, particularly in the albums like Port Royal, Death or Glory, and Blazing Stone, and Pile of Skulls. They all have a bit of Maiden-y sound to me. But if I'm looking at an album that I'm going to recommend, I'm going to say Under the Jolly Roger from '87. It has the most fun. It's the most fun for me. I love the cover. I like the pirate theme, Diamonds of the Black Chest, Beggar's Night, and I reckon Raise Your Fist if you want a real sing-along, head-banging power metal anthem, right? So that's Running Wild. I don't know why I think they sound like Maiden. Maybe I'm wrong. You can reach out and tell me if you think I'm wrong. Anyway, another one we're going to step into really is, I would say, a little one that maybe that you may never heard of. I only recently listened to them because I had to review them for someone. Look, it's a band that I think we should listen to, because we're also, a lot of the time when we think of power metal, especially me, I think of Germany, Finland, Sweden, Norway, the sort of Nordic countries. But actually, Italy makes some fantastic power metal bands. And Rhapsody of Fire, who've got a new album coming out, I believe, very soon, are another one of those sort of bands that sort of passed me by slightly. Now, they were formerly known as Rhapsody. They're an Italian symphonic power metal band. Now, that's what I told you before. A lot of the offshoots of power metal. So, is it truly a power metal band? Yes, because it's still a symphonic power metal band, which means it a lot of strings, lots of space in the notes, a lot of air in the space of the sound. You know what I mean? It's not a closed-off, confined sound. It's quite an stadium-formed, operatic, open sound, and they're very influenced by neoclassical style metal. So that's the Yngwie Jem Armstein stuff with Stratusvarius. We won't go into that because we're going to talk about that on a separate podcast. I want neoclassical is something else. I've been on a few labels, but on Nuclear Blast at the moment. And they formed in '93 as Thundercross. It's released, and they've released 12 albums, which is pretty amazing. Right? You know, again, I miss them completely. Their discography is quite interesting. So right from early on, '97, they released Legendary Tales. Right up now until last 2 years ago, they did Glory for Salvation, and they've got another one coming, I believe. I'll tell you the one that I listened to when I was doing the research for the show, and that was Power of the Dragon Flame from 2002. I picked it because it was right in the middle of their catalogue, and I thought I might listen to something in the middle where they've grown a bit. Sometimes when I'm listening to a new band, if it's got a big catalogue, I won't go straight to the first album. I won't go straight to the last album. I'll pick the middle and work backwards. And the reason I do that is I get to see where they've grown, and then I can see where they've come from. If you get to see where they come from, and you get so enamored by where they come from, when you go to the further part of the catalogue, you might get put off. But if you listen to the middle one, see how they've grown. Classic example is Maiden, right? Absolutely good example. If you listen to Power Slave first up, if you listen to Iron Maiden first up, and then go to Power Slave, you're going to, what happened? What? It is such a diversely different band because they've grown up so much. They've got such a bigger sound, better production. So I don't listen to the middle one, Power Slave first, and go backwards, and you go, hey, that's where they started. You know, wow, listen to their growth. You can do it the other way around, I suppose, if you want to. Track listings on it that I'm going to sort of recommend: Power of the Dragon Flame, the opening song, Agony Is My Name, and I think probably Pride of the Tyrant, the ninth track on the album. It's a pretty beautiful piece of music. Look, it's not my kind of thing, as I told you, but in the research I really, really enjoyed it, and I think it says that we should stretch away from just the German Nordic power metal bands. I mean, the French do some really cracking stuff, so do the Italians, and then you've got bands like Nightwish. I don't know where I put them. I sometimes think they're a power metal band, and I think they're a symphonic metal band, and I think they're a gothic metal band. They don't quite categorize themselves, so I'm going to sort of leave them on the side burner for that one, because I just don't quite know. Then you get Blind Guardian. So now we're going to go back to the go back to that European, Eastern European and Nordic country type things, and look at Blind Guardian. Blind Guardian are sort of known in the power metal scene for overdubbing the lyrics and the guitar on top of their tracks to give a very big, symphonic, large, open world sound. They're also known for their vocals. They're one of the bands that I personally adore vocally wise. The lead singer, he's just absolutely amazing. They're from Germany, formed in 1984. They sort of very influence the speed metal genres, absolutely. They've been plenty of members in the lineup over the years, but I really like the guy that is now sitting as a singer. They formed as a band called Lucifer's Heritage, and they've had many up and down in their career. I'm going to say to you now that for me, I love the original lead vocals and Hansi Kirsch. Unfortunately, his last band he last played with the band in '96. But right now, the vocalist for the band is they share the vocals across the last album, I believe. But I actually really enjoy the vocals. Oh no, Kutch is back apparently. No, hang on. Let me just do that check. 1 second. Got myself all mixed up there. He was the singer of Iced Earth. He's always been the singer of Blind Guardian. That's why my head went somewhere else. I'm about to talk about Iced Earth next. That's where my head went. Sorry, guys. If you're going for the in-depth facts, and I might get wrong, that happens. My notes, I've got the handwriting of a doctor without the income. Anyway. So, I really like the vocals of Hans and the power of Blind Guardian. Blind Guardian to me is probably the most powerful of the power metal acts out there from that part of the world. And if I'm looking for an album that I'm going to suggest, okay, right. If I'm scooting past these bands quickly, I do apologise. There's a lot to get in, and I don't want to spend too long on each band because I could miss things. I don't want to miss things. So if I'm looking at let's have a look here. What am I looking? Which one would I discography? What am I thinking of? Okay, I would say grab Night at the Opera. A Night at the Opera from 2002 first. Seventh studio album by German band. Released. Its name is after it's based after the 1975 Queen album of the same name. which is named after the Marx Brothers film of the same name. It's got one of my favourite covers by them on the art by Paul R. Gregory. It was released on 20th of March 2002. It's quite a long album, 67 minutes. It's a typical CD era album. And for me, it's got a lot of overlaid vocals, a lot of choral keys. It's got some powerful riffage on it. The drummer Thomas Storch would leave after the band after this. He said that he had dissatisfaction with the direction of the group was going in. Well, they always said that, don't they? Drummer leaves band due to musical differences. What the one say? You don't hear that from hip hop. Drum machine leaves band due to musical differences. Anyway, it's track listing as we go. For me, the opening track, Precious Jerusalem, brilliant. And then of course, Wait for the Answer. It's the 6th track, and to be honest, I really like Punishment Divine, 9th track. It's only a 5-minute 45. I think they're the three I grab onto. If you can take note with this are the ones, if I forget to put them in the notes, they're the songs you want to have listened to, because they are absolute crackers. Okay, and then we move to the side project of Iced Earth. Iced Earth is the offshoot of Blind Guardian and a few other European bands. They all seem to be very intermingled in Europe when it comes to the power metal scene, which I quite like, because that means you get a consistency across the bands, but at the same time you don't get if you've got a favourite single in one band and suddenly he's gone off to another, it can give it a bit. It's actually an American heavy metal band, actually, Iced Earth. Sorry, I apologise. It's from Tampa, Florida. But the lead singer, that's what I'm trying to say, he went from there to Iced Earth in America. The debut album was in 1990. They've released 12 studio albums. I did not know that. I'm quickly looking down my list, because I certainly thought I'm only used to my favourite of their albums, which is Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is also named after a Disney movie that I loved as a child, and also a short story by, let me work it out who that's by. Let me know. Look at this. John Schaefer. That's who it's by. It's actually one of my favourites because of that connection. It's got, let me look at who's on the personnel for that album. We've got Matt Barlow on vocals, John Schaefer on guitar, James McDowell on bass, and it's I think Ripper Owens has also played with the band. He of Judas Priest fame. And John Schaefer didn't write Something Wicked This Way Comes. I apologise. It was his saga that he wrote for the albums following, which is Something Wicked Saga, which it expanded upon later with songs like Watching Over Me. Was written as a tribute to Schaefer's deceased childhood friend Bill Blackman, who inspired the name Iced Earth. So that's a nice connection. It received mixed reviews. It says here it charted in Austria and Germany quite poorly. There's a live album version of it live in Athens. I actually think it's a really good album. I'd highly recommend it. That's the album that I would grab. And looking for tracks off of it, the Burning Times opening track, Standalone, and Reaping Stone is where I'd probably jump into, to be honest with you, if you're looking for 3 tracks off that album. You can listen to the whole album if you want to, but that's where I'd probably go. It's a Ray Bradbury story, sorry. It is a fantastic story. It's about if you've seen the Disney film, it was about the time when Disney was doing dark movies like Black Hole and so on. And it's about a roaming or a touring circus act that comes to town with a mysterious circus owner, and some very unusual things happen. It comes to the town of Greentown, Illinois, in the Midwest. It's a brilliant story. I won't give it away because I couldn't do it justice by telling you about it anyway. But I would definitely watch that or read that, and then maybe listen to Iced Earth's album and see what you get from that. And then where do we go from here? So there's so much to talk about in the genre. I think we'll jump to modern day, to the more modern bands that you may want to try and get into. One of them is Sonata Arctica. Sonata Arctica. Now they're from Finland. Dave got me onto them years ago. I didn't get to see them. I think Dave saw them at a festival in Sydney. He loved them. They have a couple of tracks. It's very symphonic. It's very power metal. It's probably the most power metal-y of power metal that it could possibly be, if you're not, unless you're Helloween. It's very, very. It has everything in the genre that you want. The band is quite a complicated band with a complicated musical output. I'm going to just find you that my favourite songs of their albums. They formed in '95 under the name Tricky Beans as a heavy rock band, and then became a symphonic metal band, or progressive metal band, as some people like to think of them. As of just after that. So their discography goes. My favourite, actually, the two albums I'm going to recommend are Elliptica from 1999 and Silence from 2001. Elliptica is my favourite because it has the most. It's got a track on it that really opens. When I first heard it, it really sort of. I don't know what it is and why it touched me, but the song Replica, and Letter to Dana. Letter to Dana is really an interesting one. I sort of laughed when I first heard it because it talks about dirty magazines and things, and I don't know whether that's in translation issue or not, but I found it very funny. I found it very moving. So Letter to Dana, Replica has got a fantastic guitar solo, one of my favourite guitar solos of all power metal bands. It's their 15th anniversary of the recording coming up. I think it was. No, 2014 it was. It was their 15th anniversary. But it is absolutely brilliant album. I would highly recommend grabbing that one from Sonata Arctica. The whole album's fantastic. Full Moon, Letter to Dana, Pictures in the Past, Destruction Preventer. But I'm going to say, if you're going to pick three, as we're talking about three songs, we're going to go with Replica, we're going to go Letter to Dana, and we're going to go Picturing the Past. That's the one I would do. There is a remastered version of Letter to Dana called Return to Sender, 2008 reissue of it. I'm going to say stick to the original one. They're not hard to find. Again, they're on most streaming platforms now. Buying them is easy as well if you want to actually get hard copies. It is not an album that you would probably, or a band that you would probably know off the top of your head, but it's a band that I would highly recommend getting your head around. And then possibly, definitely grabbing some. Let's grab Camelot. Now, Camelot, 'tis a silly place. Now that's a Monty Python's quote. If you want to, Camelot, I saw at the Basement about 5 or 6 years ago. They are an interesting power metal band. They are what they say they are on the packet, as you can imagine, with a name like Camelot. They're not going to be singing about being on the dole or politics, are they now? They're from Tampa, Florida as well. They formed in 1987 with the Norwegian vocalist Roy Khan. They've had lots of different lineups over the time. If you're going to look for an album for me that's I want to dive into, I think Epica is one to go at first. And again, it's their 6th studio album, right in the middle of their sort of catalogue. They've recorded lots of albums before and after. It's inspired by Faust. If you know what Faust is, check it out. I'm not going to go on about it now. It was released on the 3rd of March 2003. Basically, Faust is to do with a man pact with the devil. I shouldn't say I'm not going to go into that. That's not fair, is it? The plot takes place in an unknown time and place on Earth. God has commanded all angels to serve alongside humans on the Earth. But one angel named Mephisto has refused to obey his orders, claiming that he takes orders from God alone. For this, Mephisto is expelled from heaven. God eventually decides to give Mephisto one chance. If Mephisto can claim the soul of God's favourite man, an alchemist and scholar named Ariel, then he can return to heaven. If not, Mephisto will be condemned to hell forever. That is basically Faust. Okay? I'm not going to say it's a long story. That's the gist of it. The track listing, though, where do I go? It's difficult because it's a story album. So I'm going to say, this is the rare one, where I'm going to say you have to listen to the whole album. But if I was going to pull out a song, just as a song, Descent of the Archangel and The Morning After, Carry On, and Edge of Paradise. They're the three. It doesn't have to be in that order. They're the three I'd probably grab from it. But this is an album that I think you should play from beginning to end if you want to get the full goodness of power metal. This is probably, along with Helloween's Keeper of the Keys, is probably that sort of real power metal-y sort of standout image. Really, it is what if you're going to write down power metal on a stamp and write behind it the names of the bands that would represent it, this album, Epica by Camelot, is probably right on that stamp, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's probably coming to the end of it. I could go on and on and on and on. You go and dive into the genre and see what you can find. A good way of doing it is just going to Spotify or iTunes, typing in power metal, and go play and let it just go through a playlist of different songs that might grab you. Otherwise, take my advice and try the different bands, not just Helloween. So it isn't just one band. Like heavy metal isn't just Iron Maiden, thrash isn't just Slayer or Metallica. It's such a diverse genre. When you can go traditional American power metal, that's harder. You can go European, which is slower and softer. You can go symphonic, which is big and open and organic and wide sounding. Or you can go Sabaton, which is like that sort of machine driven, almost thrash like war based subgenre of power metal. Or you could go as crazy as I haven't talked about Manowar, because Manowar is a big band and there's a lot to talk about Manowar, and everyone would sort of seem to think about Manowar. I want to do stuff that maybe people don't know about. That's why I only did Helloween in a small section of it, because most of us have listened to a Helloween album one time or another, and if we haven't, well, it's about time we did. Anyway, that's the end of this week's episode. A quick run through power metal, my favourites. To be honest, I would go straight to Warlord's Deliver Us first, because it is, to me, my favourite power metal album of them all, and then to Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 by Helloween, then Epica by Camelot, and so on. Anyway, that's probably it for now. Next week, as it's getting close to Halloween, I'll do something a little bit more spookier. We might go off piste next week and actually just not talk about music, but about the supernatural. Hey, who knows? You never know. Let's see how I feel. Might chuck some music in there somewhere for you. Metal nuts, because you might go, I'm not listening to it, it's just going to talk about ghosts, but it is Halloween. It's windy out there at the moment. It's horrible. I hope you, wherever you are in the world, you're keeping safe, you're keeping warm, keeping away from the horrors of the world at the moment. And the best way to do that is plug yourself into some music and let it keep you safe, let it keep you away, let it keep you like me, gives me peace of mind, whether it's extreme metal or it's a fabulous piece of pompous, overblown, wondrous prog. It doesn't matter, does it? It's whatever rocks your boat. But if you're listening to heavy metal tones, you're probably listening to heavy metal, I'm sure. So just go and put on the stereo and let the world pass by. Talk to you soon, guys. Keep safe. Keep coming over to my page. Keep giving me some info. Like, I'd love to hear what your favourite power metal song is, what you think of power metal as a subgenre. Do you listen to it? Do you not listen to it? Has this informed you? I hope it has. As I said, sometimes I'd get my notes mixed up because I've got a small space, I've got the book in front of me, the microphone, the laptop, I'm trying to read the book, and sometimes I'll just miss a page and get my brain go somewhere else, as is my want. Anyway, keep safe, keep rocking. Ciao for now, guys. Bye for now. Bye bye.